Welcome everyone to the second episode of Cyclonic Rift. My name's Matt and this is Jon, and Jon's still not speaking. Today, we're going to be talking to you about, actually, very similar to Jon not speaking, we're going to be talking to you about a deck tech of a legendary creature that's near and dear to Jon's heart.
So near.
He has many names, One Punch Caillou, Saitama, but also just called Shu Yun, the Silent Tempest. Jon's going to take us down a bit of a corridor of his representative cards of the deck, and then, we'll just sort of break it down for you a little bit. Won't be going through every card in question, but
Yeah, the ones that really make Shu Yun pop. Because because Shu Yun is my oldest deck.
He survived.
He has survived the many years. Because how long has it been now? 3?
Above
that?
Yeah. About actually
3, somewhere between 3 and 4. Which I think for a lot of people, having a commander deck that's survived that long is
well, compare that to mine that I think the longest one I've had now is probably SRAM.
Yeah.
So that's
that's like a year, right?
Exactly.
So I have had Shu Yun for a while, and he's undergone many different iterations. But how I play him now is probably the closest he's going to get to his final form.
Yeah. So maybe on that note, though, talking about how you and I met, because this is actually right around when you and I met.
Yeah.
We talk about how this deck actually started and how it had to gain a color to get to where it is now.
Right. Yeah. No. So my first commander experience was buying the Boros commander in 2015, so Kalemny, which was the double strike giant soldier lady.
With experience counters.
Yeah, with experience counters. So I played it and I sleeved it up, and I think I played 1v1 against somebody who also was just starting, and Kalemny crushed. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I like commander now. But at the time, or I think it had just cycled out because Magic Origins had just come out, but Heroic was gone.
Which was your love child.
When I played Standard, the only time I ever really played Standard in my life, it was with Blue-White Heroic deck. And sometimes some people played Shu Yun in their builds, because you technically, while he is a Jeskai commander, you don't need all 3 colors to be effective. Mm-hmm. So I then tore Kalemny apart and made Shu Yun into a Jeskai heroic deck.
Yeah.
And I played it like that for probably several months. And then I realized it wasn't quite working. So I put it on the shelf. Then I brought him back out and tried to make him use stuff like Monastery Mentor and Young Pyromancer. Didn't quite like it. Put it on the shelf, brought it back out, and then I tried to do stuff with Kiln Fiend.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, no, that's really not quite what I want either.
You had a lot of creatures back then.
Yeah, I ran a lot of creatures. Because Kiln Fiend, I had a thing where I was trying to do stuff with God Pharaoh's Gift and Kiln Fiend and Enigma Drake. But then I said, no, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to run a basically creatureless Shu Yun build. And we're going to go full Voltron, and we're just going to commit. Yeah. So now it's a spell slinging Voltron build that kind of has some elements of Storm in it, but I think if you're playing any kind of spell slinging deck, you're going to teeter into some capacity in playing similar strategies to what Storm plays in other constructed formats.
Well, because I remember, I'm thinking back, you now play some cards that, like you said, there's a Storm card, for example.
Yeah, there's several. I play several Storm cards.
But I'm thinking back to some of the cards that remember that cycle from Legends? Dwarven Song.
Oh, yeah.
Sea King's Gift.
Sea King's Blessing,
You should probably talk about those because, you spent... It felt like months trying to track down.
Right, yeah, okay, because there's a whole cycle from Legends, but the Sea King's Blessing, Heaven's Gate, I think is the white one in Dwarven Song. Yeah, and that's when I was playing a heroic shell, because the whole thing with heroic is that when you cast a spell and you target a creature, something happens, which is great because it can't be countered. Even if the spell is countered, the heroic trigger goes on the stack. Mm-hmm. So with those cards, they were so bad, but they were great in heroic because for 1 mana, so Sea King was blue, Dwarven Song was red, Heaven's Gate was white. You pay 1, any number of target creatures become the color of the spell, so they either become blue, red, or white, which was great in Shu Yun because if you had a favored hoplite and a fabled hero and a cast one thing, everything you get, all those things trigger, and it was great. But as we'll talk about, those are no longer here.
Right. So I think that was one of the first iterations of it. I say back.
Yeah, that's what I ran probably for like the longest time
that
before.
Was like 2016 Shu Yun.
Yeah, 2016 Shu Yun, when he was still trying to find himself. It was his teenage years.
But what really? So I think, and I think the answer probably came out of gameplay. But for you though, like what was the moment where you said, okay, screw it, Kill Fiend is fun. And Name a Drake is fun, and all those sorts of like, what was the other one? Like there's a Chimera as well. That
Spellheart like Chimera. Yeah.
That I guess it's you really diving in and committing to pure Voltron.
I think it's because there was in the early days there was a couple games where with stuff like Assemble the Legion and Jeskai Ascendancy, which is still around, but like a Crone Crusader and stuff, and with Heroic and Prowess, you could have a turn where you could go off and destroy the whole table, and it can happen out of nowhere because it's a lot of the pieces are fairly innocuous by themselves, but then it's like how you sequence them, and then with Shu Yun being able to give something double strike immediately, and so I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that playstyle, and I realized that you're never gonna be able to do that consistently in some kind of deck that runs a lot of creatures with Shu Yun, because they don't trigger prowess, and like that's like the key to victory. So I decided, well, we're just gonna go full Voltron, because at least while you're not always gonna perhaps be the most competitive and you can get shut down, in these moments of glory, it's the most glorious Shu Yun, because he goes full throttle.
Because it's funny because into your identity as a player, which sounds like it's very dramatic.
Yeah.
I think though that iteration of the deck was, as you were saying, Shu Yun becomes, the deck has it can win on its own.
Yeah.
Heroic has a ceiling. People will obviously have opinions on that. And in again, multiplayer EDH, because you have to swing around. That you could have that turn, but the setup is obviously because some of the take away Heroic from like a Crone Crusader. What is it? It's a 3-mana 2/1 or something.
Yeah.
Or Favorite Hoplite, which again, not crapping on Favorite Hoplite. I love Favorite Hoplite. Battlewise Hoplite, that's the other one. But now your deck we know what you're doing, and we know how, as in your play group, it's difficult to say, because sometimes we don't think you're going to go off, and you just
then where you go. And I think because what's very important is that I think the reason why Shu Yun, and we'll talk about, well, maybe we should just get right into it. The reason why Shu Yun is good as Voltron, and the reason why I decided on Voltron is because you're basically playing with half the life total. Right? You're trying to deal 63 damage rather than 120.
Because God bless commander damage.
Because God bless commander damage. And so, but with Shu Yun, because he can give himself double strike, he only has to reach 11 power.
Yep.
So in a weird kind of abstract way, you're halving that 63 again. You really only need to get to 33. You don't have to, Shu Yun doesn't have to get to 21 power, he just has to get to 11.
And I think the deck has enough. Because obviously, the other part that he lives in, his color identity is, there's a bit of a Jeskai shell. You have, we're looking at them now, and we'll go through them in a little bit, but there's the categories that you have at a very high level, which, yes, the strategy is Voltron.
Yeah.
But the key to it, obviously, is prowess, but with all else fails, because I remember you getting into these, these sieges against someone playing Mardu stacks.
Yeah.
He knows what you're going to do, but he has, what is it, that one? Solitary confinement.
Yeah.
That there's ways to get rid of it. So I think that's the other strength of the deck, is that you're in a color combination where you could just
you have answers to everything.
Yeah, and you have so much haste enablers, which again we'll get into that. You end up paying 9 mana to bring him back out, but late game you then just have that one little little poke.
That's it. And so, because I think when you're approaching Shu Yun and other spell slinging kind of builds, I think when you look at it on paper, it might not look as strong, or you can say things about commander tax or commander damage and how it can pile up and your resources get spent for basically doing nothing. But I think the real key with playing a good Shu Yun deck is knowing your meta. I think is obviously very important, but recognizing when you have to go full throttle, when you can just chip in for a little bit, or when you're just not revealing your plan and sitting there, and you kind of almost default to playing a little bit of a control build where you're basically you're letting other people do their things. You're stopping threats that are going to stop you, but you're not stopping necessarily their bombs or anything. So you can run a lot of board wipes because you don't really care about if Shu Yun's not on the field. Even if Shu Yun is on the field, sometimes you just want to wipe and you want to reset because you're going to be accumulating so much value from kind of how your spell slinging deck is structured that sometimes you don't really need a hand. You don't need like a lot of mana. You can kind of find a way because the curve is so low. So the thing that I want listeners to keep in mind is that everything that we talk about, you have to be able to recognize when Shu Yun needs to hit the field, and you have to be able to have the right cards to see if you can get to 11 power. And you have to recognize that if you're at all hesitant about not being able to knock somebody out of the game, that you can't really make yourself look like a threat because like the backswing is going to be really bad. What you want to be able to do is very much like One Punch Man. You just want to come out and you want to knock somebody who has the shields down, whether they have no blockers, whether they're tapped out. That's kind of what you have to keep in mind when you're talking about Shu Yun. And sure, we run some cards that can kind of get around those things, and we'll get into that. But knowing when and when to not try to eliminate a player from the game is like the key decision. And I think that's something that you're only going to naturally learn the more you play him and against different kinds of players. Because if you're going into a play group where you're sitting down with 3 other people and you see mono blue, I think it's probably going to be a little difficult. But you have to be able to recognize when mono blue, their shields are down. You have to recognize when the big mid-range good stuff build is running out of gas and you can exploit. So I think, and that's one of the things I also really like about playing Shu Yun, because you have to be able to recognize when your opponent is weak so that you can crush them and punish them. And I like that kind of play style of like you're punishing people for not taking your little bald monk seriously.
Well, because it's like again, I think certainly goes back to like it's almost like the first blood idea.
Yeah.
In this deck that you're like, oh, you just again those decks where they don't care about low curve creatures. The low end of the curve is mainly on mana rocks and
you punish
tutors. You say, oh well, I'm just gonna get in here for 3, and that honestly we've seen it even without any prowess or double strike or anything. That little 3 damage matters sometimes.
Yeah,
it makes your job easier in the future.
Yeah,
so it's almost like giving them it's like a form of infect. That really is what almost like commander damage is. It's like I'm just gonna like put that there for now. I'm gonna make a little investment later on in the game. When I kill these 2 guys off, I'm coming for you. And look, like. It can be the big difference if you don't draw another cantrip, you don't draw another draw spell. You made that little investment early on. You put it in the RSP.
Yeah, because sometimes, and I think this deck is like a great deck to play against people who don't do anything substantial in their first 5 turns, or don't play creatures, or aren't coming out of the gate with like as a threat and require buildup. So whether these can be mill decks, whether these are like life gain decks that are just playing enchantments, even enchantress decks that are not really necessarily playing creatures. Like the hardest thing that Shu Yun has play against are decks where people are constantly making it difficult for you to swing in, and who are playing a very responsive, interactive deck, because this deck punishes people when they leave you alone.
I think the other little disclaimer is like you as a person who loves this deck recognize the fact that like we were looking at it before, like where he falls on. I think from our perspective, casual deck, there's a tuning level that you get to.
Yeah.
But from a competitive, it's like the understanding that within the competitive multiplayer format against combo, there's only so much that there's a ceiling for these sorts of strategies.
Yeah.
But I think if you can do that so proficiently, you're gonna also for you. I think the big thing for you is that you really enjoy piloting the deck.
Yeah.
Because I think I described it to you once as like because remember I was watching you kill me. That's what it was doing.
Yeah.
I was watching you do the math sort of thing, and you were getting enjoyment out of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you keep in mind, okay, what do I have in hand? What do I have on top? What's in my graveyard? What has already been cast? Like all these things are your.
I think you could take this deck to a competitive EDH table, and maybe depending, you might be able to like knock somebody out. I don't think you're gonna.
Turn 2 Flash Hulk is scarring. And that's
you're not gonna go into that. But if you're playing only against decks that maybe go in turn 4, turn 5, if that's what we kind of consider competitive EDH, Shu Yun can knock somebody out of the game by that. So maybe you can bring it. I don't think you're gonna win, but I think you'll have some fun.
reminding the listeners that that's something that I think that's rather our priority than anything else.
Yeah.
I think you and I would both rather much do things as opposed to, well, sorry, I like having fun. You like having fun for yourself.
Yeah, well, no, I like...
So let's...
Hey, who's the one that plays Stasis, Matt?
Yeah, but it's Mike. Anyway,
okay.
Just taps. Anyways, let's
get
into the categories that again these are very high level, and I think different decks obviously classify these things. I know there's different templates out there for deck building.
Yeah,
but I think
different
for the fact
archetypes.
that this is prowess, this is voltron,
yeah.
and this is in the colors that you're in. These are the high level categories, and I think some of these are a given.
Yeah. So I think that's probably there's two cards that I think you should play right away. And that's Jeskai Ascendancy.
It's a given. And
Jeskai Ascendancy is from Cons of Tykeer. It's blue, red, and a white. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Untap those creatures. So you kind of give Shu Yun vigilance, pseudo-vigilance. And then its second phrase is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This does a lot, but I think the most important thing, the looting mechanic is good because you can filter kind of what you have in your hand. But I think it's most valuable because it basically reads you only have to get 4 prowess triggers because Jeskai Ascendancy gives your board prowess.
Yeah, and I think this was something that it's obvious. Okay, this for full disclosure to those people listening as well. This is one of John's favorite cards because you see this in every deck you run it in.
Yeah,
because it really is almost like I'm thinking almost like it's an enchantment version of Shu Yun to a degree.
Yeah.
But it also does exactly what Jeskai does, and that's what these...
It does a lot of things.
And I've seen it, there are the few times where I've seen it where it's just what you have in hand. It's like you're down to 1 or 2 cards where that looting might not matter as much, but really the prowess. It's that, in this deck, it is doubling up your prowess and just making things easier for you.
Yeah, because the whole thing that you have to keep in mind with Shu Yun is that you need to get to 11 power. So he starts at 3... So you need 7 prowess triggers to get him to one-shot somebody. And with Jeskai Ascendancy on the field, you can cut down the amount of spells that you need to cast. So as soon as Jeskai Ascendancy hits, your opponent should know, okay, this like something's probably going to happen.
So I guess this is your first card in the category. That would be, I think, the enablers.
Yeah, these
enabler of damage.
Yeah, these are the big cards that you should be playing because it helps reduce the amount of resources that you have to expend to eliminate somebody.
Yeah, it really...
They're most efficient. They're like your pillars. And the other one, I run this card instead of other things like Furnace of Wrath, solely because it's a sorcery, but Insult to Injury. It's from Amonkhet. It's one of those split cards. We care mostly about what it is in your hand. So for 2 and a red, damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead.
It's sorcery speed.
Yeah, and that's probably something that you have to always kind of keep in mind, and this is why going back to like the piloting thing, some of the effects are sorcery speed effects, so you can't necessarily, you're gonna, before you go to combat, you're gonna one of your opponents is gonna know that they're gonna die, so you can't always do everything at instant speed. But Insult to Injury, like Jeskai Ascendancy, you are doubling the amount of stuff that you get. So Shu Yun does not have to get to 11 power. Shu Yun only has to get to 7, because you get him to 7 power, then you double strike, and then even that's probably overkill.
No, they're super...
Yeah, so you only have to get him to 6. And it also counts as 1, so you only have to cast 2 other spells.
What it also does, though, as you said, like, you don't often... I don't think I've ever seen you cast the other side of that.
No.
But what it does do is, like, it puts a card in your graveyard that, like, what is it? Deals 2 damage to target creature and player.
Yeah.
For 2 in a red. It's another spell to cast.
Yeah, it's fine.
Another prowess trigger. It's another, and really, like, you have to kill a token.
Yeah, sometimes there's relevant creatures at 2 power.
Swan Song something the turn before, kill the bird. I've seen that bird from Swan Song do so much, so many games that what's your other one in that category which I think is really important is like that you represent? Because this one though, like...
So this is a card that I've added recently, and it kind of intersects with a lot of the decks, and I don't think by itself is. If you have it in your hand, it's not going to quite do it, but like Jeskai Ascendancy and Insult to Injury, it cuts down the amount of spells you need to cast. And this is Haze of Rage. 1 in a red from Future Sight. It's a sorcery with buyback 2, so you can pay an additional 2 and return this to your hand, which I haven't done that yet, but I can certainly see instances where you would. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn, and it has Storm.
There's a lot going on.
So it has buyback, Storm, it's a spell, so it's a non-creature, so it triggers prowess, and your creatures you control get +1/+0.
But there's no flavor text.
There's no flavor text, unfortunately. Like, this is really good because, again, you only need to cast 3 spells before this.
And it's an uncommon.
And it's an uncommon. It's
I love killing people with uncommons.
Yeah, it's like 50 cents. So you only have to cast 3 spells before this, because if this is your 4th spell, Storm's going to trigger, you're going to get 4 copies on the stack. So you get up to, you add your, so that's your 7 power onto Shu Yun. Yeah, you get to 11.
Yeah, because the Storm, because the way that Storm works, the Storm copies don't trigger prowess. They're put on the stack because it makes copies. But nevertheless, I remember
you're giving Shu Yun +4.
Yeah, but I remember you casting this a couple times, and again, someone's response is like, "Oh, what? He gets +1/+0." It's like, no,
it's got Storm, like making them so
because you do, and you'll talk about them. I believe in your other category of sort of in your cantrips. There's the few that you have there that what is it? Frantic Search. We'll talk about this one now because that is a very good card.
There's two, and I think, I don't know if there's more to this cycle, but these are there's Frantic Search and Snap. Frantic Search is 2 and a blue for an instant, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands.
It's that last little bit there.
It's a free spell, right?
Yeah.
So trigger prowess, untap lands. In my build, I don't run many lands that produce more than 1 mana, but if you do have some of those, like Ancient Tomb, really good, because you'll get mana out of it. And then Snap is the other one, 1 in a blue, instant, return target creature to its owner's hand, untap up to 2 lands. Also a free spell, and free spells are good because the caveat that you should be adding to all of them is that Shu Yun gets +1/+1.
That's also an instant speed, right?
Yeah, both at instant speed. They both do things. They both do things that are relevant. They find you the cards that they need. They remove threats. They give Shu Yun +1/+1, and they let you cast another spell.
I think the other important thing as well is, and I don't think we're going to go into too much about it right now, is the fact that you're still running 3 colors. And I've seen it where you've gotten into that hard situation where, especially with his activated ability, the way that it worked out, it's just like, oh crap, I don't have any white or red somehow. It's those little, the fact that you can then untap those, like that Tri-land, or you can untap again. Another one would be helpful would be Halt Bandit Lord if you're looking to bring him out that turn in haste. That it matters, especially in a 3-color deck where a lot of these cantrips, they cost 1 mana,
but they cost a color.
Yeah, they cost that you need to have available.
Yeah, so fetch lands are very good in Shu Yun because you can hold them up, and then if you need to go get something, if you're in that moment of, oh shit, I just need like another red or another white, fetch lands are good because then you can go find it and you're okay.
So these, I think, do, they're almost in league of their own.
They're free spells. They're free spells that do things, yeah.
Free spells that do things, but free spells that do exactly what Jeskai wants to do, which is I'm going to draw cards, loot in with that other case, but also your Voltron strategy, I'm going to bounce the problematic. So maybe on the note of free spells, though.
Yeah, so free spells. Yeah, so these are all great, and they might seem a little weird about why you're running them, but they will also kind of segue into another topic too. So I run Gut Shot, Gitaxian Probe, and Apostle's Blessing, and these are all Phyrexian mana spells. So Gut Shot is 1 Phyrexian red, so you can either pay it with 2 life or red. Deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Instant speed. And then Gitaxian Probe. It's a blue Phyrexian, so you can either pay it with a blue mana or 2 life. Look at target player's hand, draw a card. And then you have Apostle's Blessing, which is 1 colorless and a white Phyrexian, so you can either pay this with 2 life or white mana. Target artifact or creature you control gains protection from artifacts or from the color of your choice until end of turn. You never pay the colored mana. You just pay the life.
Because what's everyone say the mantra that life is a resource. Life is a resource.
Gut Shot. Add the text. Shu Yun gets +1/+1.
Exactly.
I haven't been in a situation where dealing 1 damage to a player is relevant, but who knows? Gitaxian Probe. Basically, you pay 2 life, draw a card, and you get a look at a player's hand. It can be relevant if you're trying to figure out who to go after. I've certainly used that information to figure out if I've looked at somebody's hand and I see nothing but lands and 8-cost things and they're sitting at 5 mana, it's like, I'll leave you for last. Yeah. And then Apostle's Blessing is great. And I want to use this to kind of talk about some other cards. And Apostle's Blessing gives you a choice because it can either be used as a defensive spell that if you need to keep Shu Yun on the board and you need to get him, make sure that he's isn't targeted by a Vindicator or whatever, Apostle Blessing is great. Or if you need to make Shu Yun unblockable, it's great too. I
was going to say, because it's one of those few cases where compare it to something that, same mana cost to a degree, but Chosen of the Gods.
God's Willing, yeah.
Yeah, one white, gains protection from a color of choice on a turn, I think scry 1, but someone has a Solemn out, and it's just like, oh, doesn't work because It's not a color. So and that actually it matters sometimes.
So, and I did run God's Willing. The reason why I cut it and replaced it with this is because I can use one colorless mana to cast it. And so we just talked about how color intensive things can be. Sometimes you just want to burn Soul Ring mana, or you don't want to have to worry about what mana you're casting. But Apostle's Blessing segues nicely into what I consider other cards that kind of give you choice. One of them is Valorous Stance, 1 and a white, instant, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, or target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Works really well with Shu Yun, because then again you can use that to protect them or to get something that you need to get rid of. And the other one is Flusterstorm,
which I think has a reputation unto itself.
So Flusterstorm is 1 and a blue, instant, counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. Storm.
Well, 1 blue. Just 1 blue. It's just silly.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's thankfully it's been reprinted, but it used to be like a $100 card.
Yeah.
Because it was printed once.
So it's what I consider an offensive counter spell.
Offensive in more than one way.
Offensive in more than one way, because this is when you're swinging with Shu Yun with lethal, he's at 11 power, unblockable, and you have that blue player across the table. It's like or somebody who's playing Orzhov. It's like I'm gonna path this so bad, and it's like, well, let me tell you about my little 1 mana counterspell that's going to make your life difficult, because it has Storm. So by this point, typically Shu Yun, you will have cast a bunch of spells. So it's really, they're going to have to pay 5 or 6. Also then trigger Shu Yun.
Yep. I think funny enough, now that you mentioned this and Valorous Stance, I tried to kill your Shu Yun. And then by the time I ended up responding to this, it was too late, because the Flusterstorm came out and it was...
Like, you had to pay 5 mana or something.
I was dead. And it then gave it's funny, because in a way it can really... it adds to the death pile.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, as you said, they're going to cast that one thing. They also don't realize that they're adding to the Storm count, because Storm is for each spell cast this turn, so not even just for you.
It's really good.
Yep. It's
a little pricey, but if I would consider it 100% ready in your Shu Yun build. And also... somebody's tapping out to massive exsanguinate or something, Flusterstorm can also be used defensively too, and that's why counterspells are so great and fun.
It's also to go back to the price again. Thankfully, it's a bit more accessible now. It was reprinted at Rare and Iconic Masters.
Yeah.
So this is also a card you should just, if you're a hardcore blue player, Jon,
yeah.
You should at least have a couple copies of that. But again, it's a little bit more pricey, but really in this deck, it
fits the deck very well.
It's just so much benefit off of already casting spells. You're adding more value to your engine at this point.
And so now I wanted to talk about the things that you want to have in hand for when you're going to go kill a player, when you're going to one-punch somebody. And I kind of break this down into 2 categories. I don't personally run a lot of equipment or artifacts. There's certain Shu Yun builds out there that do run, that are more of like a Cheerios egg style, because prowess triggers off of non-creature, but I don't really do that. So what I need instead are instants and sorceries that give Shu Yun haste.
Yep.
And I have 3 of them here, and the other thing is that you want something that can replace itself or buff him.
Yeah, so either they sort of fall into the 2 categories of, one, the most crucial of all the evasions, or not even evasion in this case, but enabling of haste, but they also fall into the category of...
Yeah, and so you always want to look with Shu Yun, you want an effect, and then the effect by itself is good, so in this case haste, it either has to pump him, has to be reusable, or it has to draw you a card. Because otherwise it's not going to be quite what you need, because you need to constantly be drawing cards for Shu Yun to stay competitive. So I have 3 here that are kind of like the corners of this category. So you have Expedite. It was reprinted in Battle Bond, just 1 red. Instant speed, target creature gains haste until end of turn, draw a card. Straightforward.
Limited All-Star, Battle for Zendikar.
Yep. Next one, Crimson Wisps, 1 red. Lorwyn, target creature becomes red and gains haste until end of turn, draw a card. Seems really good. Draws you a card. Prowess triggered. And then the last one, Reckless Charge, 1 red. Target creature gains +3/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Eternal Masters. Also, really good, because it has flashback too. For 2 and a red, you can cast this from your graveyard.
And that, of the 3, that's the only one at sorcery speed. So
that's the only one. The other one are alright. Yeah. So the other 2 are at instance, and this Reckless Charge is at sorcery speed. They all do what you need to do, which is if you need to bring Shu Yun out and give him haste and swing if somebody has a vulnerable board state, they all do precisely that.
Yep.
And then we have the 3 or 4, depending kind of how you classify, depending how prevalent flying is in your format. So we have 4 blue cantrips. They all kind of replace themselves to a certain degree. So the first one is Leap, 1 blue. Target creature gains flying until end of turn. Draw a card. Instant speed. Pretty good.
I'm triggered.
Shadow Rift. And this is actually, I think it's because people found this one out that it's kind of climbing up in price a little. So get your hands on a copy now. So again, 1 blue. Target creature gains Shadow until end of turn. Draw a card. Shadow is this creature can block or be blocked by only creatures with Shadow. Nobody plays creatures with Shadow, so basically this is unblockable.
What about my Douthie Horror? My 2 mana 2/1 with Shadow.
Draws you a card, replaces itself.
What set is that from?
That is from Tempest.
Gotta love them.
Slip Through Space. This was Oath of Zendikar?
Oath of the Gatewatch.
Oath of the Gatewatch. Mono blue, so 1 blue again. Sorcery speed. Devoid. This card has no color. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card. That's beautiful.
So the other thing, sorry, just to pause on that for a second. The fact that it's devoid, I've seen it matter with you. Because,
sometimes it doesn't, yeah.
Because the other, I don't know if you have it out here. That talk about a flickering ward.
Yes.
You've already given him protection from blue, so he can get in that turn, and you then can now do it with the sort of. It's funny how that it matters for that one a little bit.
And the last one is Artful Dodge. 1 blue from EVASION in a strat block. Target creature is unblockable this turn, but it also has flashback.
Sorcery on that one.
Sorcery. So it doesn't draw you a card. It's not a cantrip per se, but its flashback effect is really, really good, because if you bin this in a windfall or something, it's going to be like you can bring it back. It's reusable. You can use it twice, which is really good. And I think one of the things that when you play Shu Yun, you'll have to tinker it to your meta, to your play group, to your local game store, about the right amount of balance between these kinds of cantrips, things that give haste, things that give unblockable, and you kind of have to find a good balance. Mm-hmm. And the a card that is an all-star that doesn't really quite fit into any category, but kind of sums up the offensive package of Shu Yun, is Past in Flames. Yep. It's just so good, because your mana curve for your instants and sorceries, not many of them cost more than 1 mana. So it makes Past in Flames really good. So for 3 in a red, each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equivalent to its mana cost, and then Past in Flames also has flashback. It basically, if you kind of math it out, if you've used a bunch of spells from your hand to kill one player, great. Then you Past in Flames. You get them all back, kill the second player. Great. Some of those maybe have gone away. But then Past in Flames is sitting in your graveyard for the final player. Get more cantrips, boom. For the third and final out of the inning. Does a lot of stuff. It's really good. Also triggers prowess, which is...
Trigger warnings all over the place.
Yeah, and so because there's some Shu Yun builds that run maybe more enchantments or stuff, but I've really... Because they can... Enchantments also trigger prowess, but I run more of a spells-heavy build solely because Past in Flames lets you reuse what you...
This is one of them, and obviously it's the big... It is the flashback enabler, as in it turns it on for all the other spells, but there are like Faithless Looting's also in the deck.
Faithless Looting, isn't in the deck.
I think flashback is something that's similar to... We sort of talked about it last episode.
Similar to Retrace.
And the new mechanic Jumpstart. That having that in flashbacks... case, not multiply recurrable times, but having that one, as you said, like you're looking like you're a bit out of gas, you got no cards in hand, you're then really doing what graveyards are supposed to be meant for, which is you're extending your hand into your graveyard. It
gives you more things that you need to win the game, which is always good. And then the last category I wanted to talk about are, you can run what kind of other counterspell package that you like, and I think Shu Yun players should run a counterspell package. So if you want to look at stuff like Arcane Denial, Disallow, I would certainly run Swan Song, but you should be running counterspells, because when you default into a more control mode, and I think there's a couple removal spells that we need to talk about that have certainly done me a lot of favors. The first one is Terminus,
which is just in itself in any good. I remember you're in top deck mode. You're like, oh, top deck 1 white.
Yep.
Good to go.
So for 4 and 2 white, put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's library, but what you really care about is Miracle.
For 1 white.
For 1 white. You may cast this card for its Miracle cost when you draw it if it's the first card you drew this turn. And sometimes you'll get into situations where you're drawing cards on other people's turns, so you can use it off of that, which is really good.
Well, I'm thinking as well, I've seen you do, again, this more late game scenarios where you're sitting on a lot of mana and you're sort of waiting for that opportune moment where you have those things like, I guess kind of like almost like Opt or other examples where you're doing that end step or Dig Through Time.
Yeah.
Where you're setting it up. Sometimes though, it is really that sort of like accidental, whoops, there goes the board.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I have a haste. I have something to give him a haste, and he goes back out.
Yeah.
You're dead.
Yeah.
That it's just, again, praise the miracles when they happen.
Yeah, absolutely. The second one is Fumigate from Kaladesh. 3 and a double white, destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. You're going to be getting hit a lot because people are going to see that you've knocked somebody out of the game. So I think paying the extra 1 colorless mana to differentiate this from Wrath of God is really good because you're probably going to be gaining some life out of it. And then the next board wipe I would run is Descend Upon the Sinful.
I love this card.
4 and a double white from Shadows of Innistrad, exile all creatures. Delirium. Put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. This sometimes can trigger because I do run a few kind of eggs artifacts, or sometimes people are really good and want to get rid of your 1 Swiftfoot Boots. So it's pretty. Sometimes the Delirium does go off, and getting a 4/4 white angel with Shu Yun that can give things double strike, it's a good board wipe to run.
Yeah, and if you had access to black, obviously, like there's Merciless Eviction, but I think in this case, it's answering the question of what is Shu Yun's biggest threat sometimes, and it's blockers. When you can't give him that evasion you need to, so you're getting rid of it. Also, fun fact about this card that I love is when they translated it into the French, they messed up, and instead of the Sinful, they said Descend Upon the Fisherman. So that's what I always call it that.
Descend Upon the Fisherman.
It's just a good card. Like, even if you don't get the Delirium, it's good.
And then the last board wipe I run, and this is also a card that's a powerhouse, Elspeth's Sun's Champion. 4 and a double white. We really only care about its -3 ability, which is destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. But its +1 is you get to put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, and its -7 is you get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying.
Yeah, and she does come in with 4 loyalty, so you can immediately do what you said you want to do, and she sticks around afterwards. So often, she also can close out a game sometimes. We've seen that happen where...
If you just kind of leave her alone, if your player cannot answer her, she can win a game by itself. You don't even need Shu Yun. The one thing to keep in mind is that if you have Shu Yun on the field, Planeswalkers trigger prowess, so Shu Yun will have 4 power. So just be careful how you sequence this. If you bring in Shu Yun after Elspeth, you're okay. Or if you play Elspeth into a board where Shu Yun is not there. But there's also going to be instances where you'll bring down Elspeth after combat to deal with a potential lethal backswing. But those are kind of like the 20 cards that I think you should consider when you're looking at your next, if you're looking to join the next One Punch Club. There's counterspells and in removal will be a preference to your play group. I think what Shu Yun has a harder time dealing with, you almost don't care about creatures because you know you're going to get hit. Probably enchantments and artifacts are things you're more concerned about. Anything that taxes your spells.
Stacks is a big... Stacks is always
Painful
a problem.
Quandary and Dampening Sphere really shut you down. So you want to find answers of getting rid of that. Or if you can bounce permanents, those are good too. Sometimes running... Since you don't have necessarily a lot of permanent effects on the field, you can also consider running a lot of the mass bounce spells. Obviously, things like Cyclonic Rift and Devastation Tide are also going to be pretty good for you.
Yep.
But I think those are the cards that you kind of want to consider running. Yeah, look at cantrips that draw you cards and have effects, and your whole goal, your whole game plan is getting to that 11 power mark. So
I think there's a lot of cards that we obviously couldn't go over in the time we have right now.
We can talk about a lot of choices about why I make them, yeah.
But I think if there's anyone who's curious, one thing we'll make sure to do is to post the deck list on Tapped Out.
Yeah.
Just so you can also see, because I think this is something that, and this leads us to the next question, which is you can then sort of look to compare it to other deck lists that are out there, because as we were looking, there are, as you mentioned them as well, there's those egg strategies or the Cheerio, like zero-cost artifacts or low-cost artifacts that enables prowess in a different way. But it's, as you said, it's more... They're more so concerned with permanence, not which is funny because he's a monks and ideas of impermanence.
Yeah.
But the next question is, I think, and we talked about it before, is tuning it more than you have now.
Right.
So there's obviously, and again, we didn't go over it for right now, but there's the mana base question, because you're playing Jeskai, you're playing a fast commander, and so really it's similar to a Narset deck. That what do you want to do? Get them out fast. What do they need to do? They need to come out swinging.
Yeah.
So
I think if you're looking at mana bases, and I mentioned this before, fetches are really good.
Yeah.
Because they can get you the colors that you need right away. Shocklands are really good because you're going to have all kinds of color issues. If you're looking at like high power mana artifacts, you want to go after. I mean, a turn 1 Shu Yun would be great. I think Chrome Mox.
Yep.
Because it also triggers. Because the thing to keep in mind is that artifacts also trigger prowess. And then if you really want to get into the high powered counter spells, like things like Force of Will and Mana Drain. One card though that I've been meaning to pick up and I want to see its effect is Search for Iskanta.
Yep.
And I think that's a card that works really well in Shu Yun because it's, even though it's an enchantment, it's low cost, transforms into resources, lets you filter your draws, and Search for Iskanta's activated ability in the land mode lets you dig for non-creature spells.
Yeah, and I think the card itself has shown its strength in standard in a meta that is actually, it's funny enough, in a standard meta where one of the top deck lists at the time, mono red aggro, that the always fun winless decks, Teferi or like Godpharaoh's Gift or Scarabot, like we've a lot of us have played against them, that you see that come out turn 2 and you realize this is going to be in there for the long haul.
Yeah.
And I think it's, especially in this deck, throwing things in your graveyard with flashback, getting value in the late game, and then eventually flipping it over when you need to. That's the important thing as well.
Yeah, when you need to.
Because you can always just keep it as a bit of a filter.
Yeah, which I think is good. So yeah, I would, if I was going to be upgrading this, I would like making sure that you have fetches to help, things that help you find the mana that you need, and then some of those high-powered artifacts and high-powered counter spells.
Yeah, there's like Grim Monolith, Mana Crypt, like the things that I remember when I built some decks, I always go, man, it'd be great to have $150 to drop on this.
Yeah, because obviously a turn 1 Shu Yun or a turn 2 Shu Yun eliminates that whole philosophical question of when am I going to bring him out and who am I going to attack, because while sure you could be, I think more people are smartening up with playing early blockers, but I don't think a lot of people still run a lot of 1 and 2 drops in certain color combinations.
No.
So getting him out early can be good.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is, because again, this is a deck that has evolved and continues to evolve, that the new cards that, because so
with Guilds of Ravnica,
at the time that we're talking, this is being recorded the day it was released, actually, on release day. And you had the pleasure of getting your hands on some cards last weekend at the pre-release, the Two-Headed Giant, which you crushed. But not using Jeskai, though.
No, not using Jeskai.
But like you have two in hand. Why don't you run through those and talk about...
Okay, so I'm really excited to see how Jumpstart works.
Yep.
And I have put 2 aside, but there's more Jumpstart effects than obviously just these two cards. But I really want to try these ones out in particular. So the first one is Maximize Velocity. It is very good because it is 1 red mana.
Yep.
Target creature gains +1/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. But it doesn't draw you a card, which is like, okay, but why do you think this is good? Because it has Jumpstart.
And that is...
it
is sorcery
speed. It is sorcery speed. So you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs. Then exile this card. So it is like it's a pseudo flashback. It is kind of flashback, and it gives haste, and it gives +1/+1. So you can reuse it.
Yeah, it's a cousin. It's flashbacks, because we sort of talked about... We hinted at this last episode.
With Retrace, yeah. So I'm interested to see how it works.
I feel like it's on probation right now.
Yeah. It's got to see how it's going to work. But the other one, and a lot of people, there was some buzz around this, is Chemister's Insight. So it's 3 in a blue, instant speed, draw 2 cards, Jumpstart. And I don't run a lot of pure card draw in this deck because I like to attach card draw to Shu Yun. But the reason why I think this could be really good is because if you bin it, you can get it back. If you need to get rid of a land, or some other kind of dead draw, this works. It's also instant speed, which I think is really important.
Yep.
And it's only 3 in a blue. So this and you can reuse it, which I think is why it's different from cards like Glimmer of Genius.
I was gonna say that's actually what it makes you think of. Is it's the cool kid at school. It's the new version of minus the energy.
The new Glimmer.
Like you do lose the scry.
Yes.
Or you do lose the energy. I can't remember exactly what the card has, but it's, at least in this deck, as you said, it goes back to what you sort of talked about. Is one, you could always at someone's end step, draw those cards, and then on your turn or late game, it becomes an enable. It's a prowess enable. If
you're in situations where you need to windfall or something early game, and you don't feel bad about putting this in your graveyard, you feel bad about putting a Glimmer in your graveyard.
Yeah. It's something that it's extending your hand.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
And so the last card that's not Jumpstart, but I really want to see how it works because I'm very intrigued. I haven't gotten my hands on one, but I think it's something that Shu Yun players should consider.
All Boros players.
And all Boros players is Chance for Glory. So 1 in a red-white, instant speed. Creatures you control gain indestructible. Take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game.
And I think the indestructible lasts until...
The indestructible doesn't say till end of turn. It is a permanent... It is there. I don't run Sundial of the Infinite, but...
This is one of those build-around cards.
Yeah.
In some decks, but I think
this could be a deck, and one of the things that people always say about Voltron is like, oh, well, you're going to die. Like, you're not going to last till the end. Because people are going to figure you out. Chance for Glory could be a card that just pushes you over the edge to win. I'm interested because it's a cheap spell. And I guess obviously one thing that we didn't talk about are extra combat steps and extra turn. So if that's an avenue that you can take. I don't run a whole lot of it because I default to this more political position of you need to be able to pick your battles, and I don't think Shu Yun has enough gas to kill everybody.
You want to pick your battles instead of just getting multiple attempts.
And I think some of the very expensive extra turn spells would probably be pretty good in Shu Yun.
Sure. There's also I think that our last little thing to talk about on this is really like the sort of the why don't you play blank?
Yeah.
I think it's just it's your version of this build that, like we said, there's the bog Cheerios. You don't do that because it's more spell slinger. And I think similar to like your Narset deck, you choose how you're going to win. Yeah. You again, that's the beauty of our format. The creature screams obviously what you're doing. Tells you what you're going to be doing. But the way you go about doing that is really up to you. And as you said, I think watching you play this deck, you really prefer to just sort of shuffle those, like you're shuffling those cards in hand, and you want to be able to you want to say this is the turn. Yeah. As opposed to the groans that I know that sometimes I even create where I'm going to take an extra 3 turns. Yeah. I'm fine with extra combats because usually it's like, you're just super duper killing me. Yeah. Like I'm just like I'm pulverized into the ground as opposed to I'm going to do the Jeskai extra turns, which is I'm going to play a land, draw a card, cast a bunch more things, kill this person, and then sort of it's a way people can go, I think. Yeah. But really depends on if your friends are just going to hate you more for taking extra turns. And
because one of the things if you're looking into extra turns is you don't want ones that exile themselves.
No. There are a few
cheap ones that do that.
No, there's
you could maybe should probably put in Time Warp. Time Warp would probably be okay.
I think Nexus of Fate because it's such a hot topic card nowadays, and we won't get into buy box promos here, but it's something that I think. So to wrap it all up, I think for the deck itself, what I've enjoyed as the viewer. And the
victim.
The victim, on the receiving end of this is that one, it against I think I talked about last episode of like the more tuned decks that I have against Solvala, this can win. Yeah, because if it's just like you got rid of my commander, well I can't get rid of yours, so and I've seen you just take out. And I think it's the strength of your bald man that he can kill a lot of different types of decks. Yeah.
I think people underestimate Voltron.
It's the double strike as well. Did we ever read his his other ability. I apologize for that, or what Shu Yun actually is.
Well, yeah, we never know. Maybe we never talked about what Shu Yun is. You can look up what he does, but I think you get the message about he has prowess and he gives himself double strike.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Do you have any? What's your the other thing that we like to talk about is like the stories that from the library of like
from the vault.
I don't know. Do you have like a favorite? I still think back to I tried to use my Valorous stance, and then you countered it, which was hilarious.
Yes. I think I don't really have one specific story beyond, or well, maybe it was the other day where I fluster stormed your Valorous stance.
I'm still talking about it, so it must be memorable to someone.
And I think I love playing decks like that make people go, oh. I didn't know that was gonna happen.
Yeah,
so Shu Yun is a deck that just goes and he doesn't have to be on the field, but suddenly he's on the field and suddenly he's the transcendent master and he just knocked you out of the game.
Yeah, he's done in.
Yeah, he's the force is with him.
He's it, man. That's the thing that always comes out when we play is that one line from Star Wars is I am the force. The force is with me, and that I think encapsulates Shu Yun perfectly. I'm just glad you still play it. So that brings us to the end of this little walk through Jon's soul encapsulated into a stack of cardboard. As per usual, as mentioned before as well, the deck list we'll try to get on Tapped Out.
Yeah.
But always feel free to get in touch with us on our multiple social media platforms that we're going to try to hold up and stay on top of. Find us on Reddit. We'll be posting it to the subreddit there. To EDH and the Magic subreddit itself. Follow us on Twitter at the Cyclonic Rift Podcast, on Facebook at Cyclonic Rift Podcast, and on YouTube at Cyclonic Rift Podcast. The naming of these things don't really change.
Yeah, so do you want to tell your horror story about Cyclonic Rift this week, Matt?
No, it's just it's the same shit different day.